Every chip in your phone. Every GPU training AI. Every controller in a $30,000 EV. All of them were patterned by a chemical that comes almost entirely from 3 companies, and all 3 are in Japan. In this episode, we'll answer 3 questions. First, why does Japan control 90% of the world's most critical chip chemicals? Second, what can a US investor actually buy in this space? And third, why this moment, April 2026, is the most interesting entry point in a decade. When people talk about the chip industry, they talk about NVIDIA. They talk about ASML's $300 million EUV machines. They talk about TSMC's fabs in Taiwan and Arizona. What they don't talk about are the chemicals flowing through those fabs. Every wafer goes through hundreds of process steps. At each step, you need photoresist to define the pattern, wet chemicals to clean the surface, specialty gases to deposit and etch atoms, CMP slurry to polish layers flat, sputtering targets to deliver metal interconnects. The whole electronic chemicals market is around $76 billion in 2025. Wafer processing chemicals alone make up 38% of it. And here's what makes it interesting: most of the highest margin segments are controlled by a handful of companies. Some of them you can buy on the New York Stock Exchange. Most of them you cannot. Let me give you a number that should not be possible in a $76 billion market. In 2019, when Japan announced export restrictions on 3 chemicals, photoresist, hydrogen fluoride, and fluorinated polyimide, Korea checked its books. Samsung and SK Hynix were sourcing 93.2% of their photoresist from Japan, 84.5% of their fluorinated polyimide. Together, those 2 companies make most of the world's memory chips. Japan's exports of hydrogen fluoride to Korea dropped 87.9% in the months that followed. Korea filed a WTO complaint. Samsung quietly burned through inventory while engineers redesigned around the squeeze. That was 6 years ago, and not much has changed. 3 Japanese companies, Tokyo Oka Kojo, JSR, and Shin-Etsu Chemical, still control roughly 90% of the world's EUV photoresist. The chemical that lets a $300 million ASML machine pattern silicon at 2 nanometers? Made in Japan. Almost all of it. So why Japan? The answer is decades of compounding process know-how, sealed inside customer trust that's almost impossible to break. Photoresist isn't a commodity. It's a polymer recipe so precise that a 1 part per billion impurity can ruin a wafer worth tens of thousands of dollars. Each new node, 7 nanometer, 5, 3, 2, requires a new resist formulation, qualified for years in customer fabs. And here's the part that makes the moat permanent. In 2024, Japan's sovereign wealth fund took JSR private for $6.4 billion. The official acknowledgement from Tokyo: photoresist is a national security asset. Not chips. Not equipment. The chemicals. Tokyo Oka is now spending over 200 billion yen on a new EUV plant in Fukushima. Intel is co-developing sub-2 nanometer resist with TOK. The race isn't to break the moat. It's to deepen it. Now the question every viewer is really asking: what can I actually buy? Here's the global landscape as of April 2026. The Japanese giants, Tokyo Oka, Shin-Etsu, Sumitomo Chemical, Fujifilm, Resonac, combined revenue runs north of $35 billion in electronic materials. JSR is private. Shin-Etsu and Fujifilm trade as illiquid ADRs. Merck KGaA, the German one, holds the old Versum business after a $6.5 billion acquisition in 2019. Also not a clean US listing. For a US portfolio, the pure-play universe is 5 names. Entegris, ticker ENTG, around $24 billion in market cap. Element Solutions, ESI. The new 90, ticker Q, spun out of DuPont last November. MKS Instruments, MKSI. And Materion, MTRN. Then add the gas oligopoly Linde, Air Products, Air Liquide. That's it. 8 tickers, total. In a market of $76 billion annually. Entegris is the most concentrated bet you can make on chip chemical purity. In 2022, they paid $5.7 billion for CMC Materials, formerly Cabot Microelectronics, the world's #1 CMP slurry maker. Then in 2024 they sold off their non-fab business and went pure play. 2024 revenue, $3.24 billion. Net income up 62% year over year despite a top-line dip from divestitures. What Entegris actually does is hard to glamorize, which is why most investors miss it. Every fluid that touches a wafer flows through their filters. Every CMP step uses their slurry. Every gas line has their valves. They are the plumbing of every fab on Earth. And the plumbing earns a 30% gross margin while everyone fights over who builds the next fab. The newest name on the list is also the largest pure-play opportunity in years. Qnity Electronics, ticker Q, was spun out of DuPont on November 1, 2025. It joined the S&P 500 the same day. Inside it sits the old DuPont Electronics and Industrial segment, $5.93 billion in revenue in 2024, up 7.4%. Two halves: Semiconductor Technologies and Interconnect Solutions. Photoresists. Polishing pads. Advanced packaging materials. The market noticed. Qnity went from spinoff close near $70 to around $143 by April 2026. Market cap above $30 billion. The bet is simple: a focused electronics-only company, freed from DuPont's plotting industrial portfolio, can finally re-rate. The risk: the chemicals business has always traded at industrial multiples for a reason. Qnity now has to prove it deserves a semiconductor multiple. Then there's the gas trade. Specialty gases, nitrogen trifluoride, ammonia, silane, the molybdenum precursors used in advanced 3D NAND, are a $5 billion slice of electronic chemicals. They flow into every fab through pipelines built by three companies: Linde, Air Products, and Air Liquide. Air Liquide is the cleanest tell. Their electronics business hit €2.51 billion in 2024, up 8.2%. 91% of that revenue now comes from semiconductor customers. This is no longer an industrial gas company with a chip side gig. This is a semiconductor materials company wearing an industrial gas costume. Linde is expanding neon production capacity 12% for EUV lithography. Air Products signed a major Samsung supply deal. The same fabs that need photoresist need 200 different gases to function. The Oligopoly delivers them under 20-year contracts. There is no spot market. Why does this story matter now, in 2026? ASML shipped 48 EUV systems in 2025, up from 44 the year before. The plan for 2026 is 60. By 2030, the installed base will roughly double. Every one of those machines burns through Japanese photoresist around the clock. AI chips, NVIDIA Blackwell, AMD MI400, Google's 7th generation TPU all use the most advanced nodes that need the most expensive chemicals. The math is not subtle. Wafer starts at the leading edge are projected to grow 8 to 10% annually through 2028. Chemical intensity per wafer is rising: more layers, more masks, more polish steps. CMP slurry consumption alone grew over 17% in 2023 by tonnage. Fujifilm's CMP slurry segment has compounded at 19% for a decade. This is not a cyclical chemical story. It is a secular one. But there's a serious bear case worth airing. These are still chemicals companies. They earn industrial margins, not semiconductor margins. China is investing tens of billions to build domestic photoresist and CMP slurry. The 2019 Korea episode taught every chip-making nation the same lesson: if Japan can weaponize the chemicals, so can anyone else. Localization is coming. But here's what the bear case misses. Building a fab takes 3 years. Building a leading-edge photoresist takes 30. China has poured $5 billion into local photoresist since 2019 and still can't crack the EUV grade. The technology gap isn't a moat, it's a moonshot. And every year ASML ships more EUV machines, the global installed base gets more dependent on Japanese chemistry, not less. In my view, the localization narrative is real but slow. The pricing power story is real and immediate. Looking 12 to 18 months ahead, the most likely path is supply tightening with steady earnings revisions upward. I'd put roughly a 65% probability on the leading US-listed names Entegris, Qnity, Element Solutions outperforming the broader semiconductor ETFs through 2027. Watch these 3 signals. First, ASML's quarterly EUV shipment numbers every step above 60 systems for 2026 adds direct demand for Japanese photoresist and US-made fluid handling. Second, Qnity's first independent earnings reports, the first 1 or 2 quarters will tell us whether the spin-off thesis is real or a re-rating that's already played out. Third, China's domestic EUV-grade photoresist qualification status. Any news of a Chinese fab successfully running domestic resist at 5 nanometer or below would be the first crack in the moat. On the upside, KKR's pursuit of Teo Holdings signals private capital sees more M&A coming in this space. On the downside, a US-China tariff escalation that pulls in chemicals could disrupt the whole supply chain. Upstream, the precursor chemical makers, Cabot Corp's fumed silica, Materion's high-purity metals, gain leverage. Downstream, every fab operator sees a higher chemicals cost line that they can pass through to AI customers who don't blink. That's electronic chemicals, the most concentrated choke point in the entire AI build-out, hiding under the floorboards of every fab. 5 tickers, 1 secular trend, 1 decade of compounding moat. I'm Big Z, follow me, see you in the next deep dive.